Hey, welcome, Zack. We're excited to have you on the Advisory Board podcast. Everybody, this is Zack Fishman. Zack, say hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me join, Dave. Really appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm glad you can make time. I know you're busy. So, guys, let me introduce our guest. So, Zack Fishman is one that doesn't need a lot of introduction to many people, but he is. I guess I'll say it this way, and I got to tell a funny story. I met Zack before I met his parents. Brad and Sherry. And when I was, and then when I went to IFA, you know where I'm going with this, Brad. I went to IFA, my first IFA conference, and I bumped into Brad. He's like, "Oh, I'm Brad Fishman." I was like, "Oh, you're Zack's dad," and he was like, what the hell? Like, I'm Brad Fishman. I'm not Zack's dad. It was so funny. And then your mom came over and gave me a hug in the bar, and she's like, "You made my night. Like, this is so fun to see him like that." It was so funny. I don't know if he'll ever forgive me for that. But the Fishmans have been in the industry forever, running PR. They're like they're like the godfathers of the IFA. Like, they just understand what's going on. Like, they really, and the PR that they do is world class. So I don't know, but what would you add to that, Zack? Like, tell us a little bit more about you personally, and not your parents, but you, and a little bit about Fishman PR too.
First, I will say that is something that it's actually a widely held belief that is the first time that my father has ever been so humbled to speechlessness. That was really where he was at that point. He kind of turned around and said, "I'm proud of you, but I also hate you at the same time," which was, I think, which is okay. But I think that it's a long-standing joke that we actually have in the family now, that he doesn't actually like. He's allowed to make fun of us, but we're not allowed to make fun of him, as I'm sure you'd expect. But I digress. So, Fishman PR has been around for, it's going to be 30 years this year. And my mother has been in franchising PR her entire career. So she started doing it when she was 22 years old, coming out of college. And she rose up to VP at a former firm, with many others in the space that were part of franchising PR in the past, like, who I call my aunt, Rhonda Sanderson. And then she went and started her own firm. My parents have been doing it for 30 years. My father joined her about 15 months later.
Mm-hmm.
I think I recall it was more 9, but I think that that's what it was. They had been married for 15 months. And so he was like, "Yeah, newlywed wife. I'm totally going to get into business with her. That's a great idea." And it actually worked out really well, of course. And they've been, their bread and butter really was franchise development, lead generation, public relations in its infancy. And then the firm really grew into a whole lot more than that. I mean, today we're doing consumer brand awareness PR on a national and regional and local scale as well. Influencer relations is a large part of what we do every day. And then we also are doing content marketing and a little bit of digital marketing here and there as well. And so the firm has really grown quite a bit. We have 4 offices around the world, 2 of which that are in the US, 1 that is in Canada, and then another that is in the UK, actually. And then we've got about 50 something employees with over 100 brands that we work with around the world. So I think that it has, been really great to see it blossom as I've grown up. And I recently got involved in the business in September 2019. Before that, I was at a startup in New York City for a number of years called FranFunnel, which I loved and really was my trial by fire in franchising, to really, I suppose, chart my own path, which I think was a really good thing. But I really did grow up around PR, and it is a passion of mine that I've always had, just simply because I always wanted to be who my mom and dad were. And I think that I'm not ashamed to say that is the truth. And so I happen to believe I might be a mixture of them, which is good and bad, I think, sometimes. But overall, it is really, it is incredibly rewarding to be able to work with such smart people who also happen to be family to me as well. And so, I think that, in the long run, I'm really excited to see where the firm goes and what we're able to do. But that is just a little bit of background on us and how I got involved.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I'm sure we'll dip into that a little bit more as well. But guys, I just realized that we're going to be talking about public relations, PR today, and how we can use that as a tool, why it matters, what people are getting out of it, best practices, all sorts of stuff. But I couldn't think of anyone better to bring into this. So Zack, thanks for making time.
And absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, it's my pleasure. Let's talk for just a minute about the why. I think we've always got to start with that. And a lot of people, my undergrad was in PR. I've worked in PR. My first role out of college was doing PR for a Fortune 1000 high tech company, and then also getting into their sales department. So I went to the dark side for what you PR guys, you say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about why, because a lot of people don't get it. They're like, yeah, I have this much money, so I want to put it on PPC or something they think generates leads better. Could you start with that? Like, why should people be paying attention to PR in the franchising space?
Yeah, so it's kind of separated into a couple different buckets, candidly. And recently I had a prospect come to me who I was friends with. We've been friends for a little while now, and he kind of said to me, I know we've never worked together before, but there's something to be said about marketing without really marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an interesting concept to him, I believe, because it's a brand in franchising that you wouldn't necessarily believe has a whole lot of emotional attachment to it. It's a home service brand, and I know that you obviously do a lot of work with that, and so do we. But I think that it requires a special amount of nuance to really create that emotional connection with the home service brand, as opposed to a coffee concept or a pet concept or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I think that the fact remains that that's really what PR is, right? Is that it is essentially putting the pen in somebody else's hands instead of your own. That's really the difference between ads and organic traffic like PR, where you're essentially convincing somebody else that your story is not only important enough to listen to, but it's also important enough to write about, right? Or to showcase on TV or whatever that may be. And so that really is divided in two ways, right? So you're thinking about the business opportunity or the franchise opportunity. Why would people even care? And why is PR even helpful to even promote that? I think that it's really important to ensure that you have that fine line between PR appearing as if it's an advertorial, where you're just kind of talking about it, and you're talking about numbers, within reason, of course, in terms of what you can say and all of that great stuff. It's so much more impactful to be able to have an all-star franchisee coming on and talking about why the brand's great and the story that they went through and the change that the brand made in their life, and the way and the fact that you can be that way too. Or maybe it's something about the leaders in general, what the leaders are saying. That might be the difference between you investing in a brand or not. If you think the leader isn't such a nice guy, or if you think that the CEO isn't really, or you think that the CEO, she's just incredibly impressive and you just want to learn more and you love her story, that makes a significant difference in why candidates, make decisions, because they want to see that the leader in front of the brand is going to be somebody that they want to partner with, because at the end of the day, that's what franchising is. And I think lastly, as it relates to franchise development, PR, it's all about how you're relevant and how you're different. And I think that the easiest way to do that is to almost kind of make it feel as if it's something topical. It's not something that's like directly relevant to them. But when you're positioning somebody as kind of an expert in something, like for instance, if it's a coffee concept and you're trying to position them as to why people are actually going to drive through coffee concepts more than ever before because they don't want to go inside because of COVID. Like that's a perfect example of something that people are going to want to see, and then they're going to be like, okay, well, that's obviously a great investment, because they feel like drive-through is the future. And so those are just kind of a couple examples on the franchise side. And as it relates to consumer, you eloquently talked about it a little bit earlier. I think that that's really all about, making your consumers your best salespeople, right? And I think that also it really helps with franchise development as well, because when the franchisees are making more money because more people have heard of them and more people are actually investing in what they do, the franchisees are going to be more willing to be those all-star franchisees. They're going to be more willing to talk positively about what your brand is doing for them in their life, right? And so that's really where it dials down to as well. So between those two, it is really important to be able to care about PR. And I think that you asked a really eloquent question in your little preparation here about how it drives revenue and growth. And I think that the easiest way to explain it is, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this too, just from your background, PR is something that has long been very difficult to track. I think that, I know that, I'm sure based off of your expertise as well, you've seen it's very hard to track. However, in the past 3 to 5 years, there has been significant strides and a lot of M&A on the tool side of things. And I think that that's made it a lot easier for firms like us to be able to track all the metrics that you need. But really what it boils down to at the end of the day is that PR is honestly going to be helping you across your entire sales funnel. That's really the reason why it's so hard to track, because it can affect you in so many different ways. It may actually get you leads at the top of the funnel for a new franchise candidate, or a new person that's going to be coming through to your coffee shop, but it also very well might help somebody get over the finish line at the very end. Or it may actually help you to divide between a bunch of brands you're choosing from. You then know that you want to focus on just one because of what you saw. So I think that really is why it's so hard to track. But at the end of the day, it helps across the entire sales funnel for both trying to get you and me to go get a cup of coffee and for somebody to invest in the brand too.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've heard the adage, brand over time leads overnight. I think PR is a tool that does that. Both of those things if done well. I've run across the same challenge a number of times where people say, well, I don't know if it makes sense for me to invest in public relations right now because, I really just need leads today. What they don't understand is it does both. But most people, I think they think of it as kind of this ethereal brand building tool. And they forget, let's talk FranDev for a minute. One of the most important steps, you got to get people in the door, right? But right now, it's not a huge problem. It's a great time to be in franchise development because of the economy, how tumultuous things have been. People tend to look toward franchising. We're seeing those data trends right now climbing pretty high to the right as far as how many people are interested in franchising. But what most people forget is the importance of the validation call. And this is where some of the things that you've talked about, and validation call aside, validation in general, that happens so high up the marketing funnel now. Most people don't even, they don't realize that they're doing it. It's the whole Google 0th moment of truth, or where before people actually get into any sales funnel, they've already done their research. So this is where I think people undervalue PR is they're Googling, they're looking, they're investigating all these different franchise concepts. Many of them aren't investing properly in content development strategies and PR pieces that do the pre-validation. So I can see who's the leadership of this group and how valuable or how are they investing in their franchisees to help them succeed? And what are the franchisees saying? It's a mystery. Like I've looked into this before just because I'm curious or because it's a client of mine or a brand I'm going to work with to help automate the other end of the funnel, which is once the lead's been created, converting them and closing them. But I've been surprised how little information, how little investment brands have made, even big brands, into proper content that people are going to be researching before they ever talk to a franchise consultant.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that one thing that my father, for many who are listening who know who he is, he compares absolutely everything to dating. And I think that it's funny. It's funny now because I'm now at the age where he would have been engaged by now. So now I feel like that all of it's juvenile at this point. But I digress. But I think that the way to think about PR is that when you go out on a date with somebody, you want to try and figure out as much information as you possibly can about them. You want to be able to have that third party validation from a friend, or maybe it's from Facebook or whatever you actually have access to be able to learn more about that person. Without that, they're just a face, right? And there's really nothing that you can do. Ads don't really feel and create that warm and fuzzy feeling that you get about investing in a brand or deciding that you want to spend your hard-earned money, especially right now, on a service that brand provides, right? And I think that PR really allows you to, create that color for people to be able to make an educated decision on whatever they may be spending money on, right? And I think that the same goes for me too, right? When I'm going on a date with somebody, I want to know as much as I possibly can without it being creepy. And I think that, I think that PR really is the best way to be able to do that. It's a very important part of an integrated marketing approach.
Yeah, without being creepy. Because PPC, invasive ads, display ads are a little creepy. I'm not going to lie.
That's the display ads. That's what I was going to say. Display ads are basically like the stalkers of marketing. That's really
there's no doubt about it. Like, let's stick with the metaphor because it works. But man, yeah, you say the worst is when you say something and Google listens to it and then you didn't even look for it. It's like on your display ads, like this is now disturbing. But that's the creeper before the date who's like, trying to get into their
exactly
Facebook profile. Cool. Well, that's actually really helpful. And I hopefully that provides some context for the rest of our discussion about like, okay, why do we care? Because it generates revenue, because it generates pre-validation information that people need so they can make good decisions. And we have to give our consumers credit, right? Especially on the FranDev side. These are smart people. They've been successful. They've got money and desire and skills. And they research the heck out of what they're doing on the franchise investment side of the house before they even talk to anybody or fill out a form. So yeah, let's shift gears for a minute though and talk about, okay, PR today. Like what are components? How are you seeing people use and engage across different media in the PR world?
Yeah, so as of this moment, there's a couple things that we've been able to do that have been really great. I think that the first thing is, as it relates to the business side of things, or franchise development, is all about how it's relevant to COVID, right? And I think that that's obviously what it's all about. But I think that the primary thing that you're talking about as it relates to, the restaurant world, for instance, how innovative were you able to get in terms of off-premise dining, and talking about drive-through, and are you going to be left behind if you don't prioritize, reformulating an entire new build out or whatever it may be? There's been a lot of M&A going on. Many of our clients have been buying concepts that have been doing really well this year, like the pizza concepts and the wing concepts, and a lot of distressed assets that have been out there and things like that. And so being able to talk about those different types of approaches to kind of take it, I guess, really honestly, take advantage of the moment in terms of how you ended up shaking out and what you're doing about it, is a really important component. I think the second thing too, it is a little bit getting a bit tired now, but the thought leadership side of things and how you led people through the pandemic is something I'm sure you've seen a lot of, but that is something that the media still finds to be really important. But more importantly, looking forward, I think is what people care about. What initiatives were born out of this and why was it important? I think that really is what people are caring about. And there's examples that I can go through later. So that's really the business side. And as it relates to, the consumer side of the house, we typically do a lot of work with, grand openings and things of that nature, where we're doing, little pop-up events when somebody opens up or something cool in a local market or whatever it may be. Obviously, gatherings are not a super great thing right now. And so we had to come up with a lot of really innovative ideas in terms of what's going on in the world, based off of what's going on in the world, rather. And, one of the things that we did is that there was a lot of virtual, take-home contests that we did. So we have a pizza concept that we work with that did a take-home, did like a take-home make-your-own pizza kit contest, and based off of like whoever took a bunch of pictures on Instagram and whoever had, the craziest concoction, like got an award at like a local thing, or like got to like name the pizza at like a local thing, or got to donate to frontline workers or whatever it may be. Whatever you can do to kind of create that brand buzz and tie it into charity in terms of what's going on in the world has been something that we've done a lot of work in. The world hurt this year, right? Or last year rather, thank the heavens. The world hurt a lot in 2020. And I think that charity really, and cause marketing, was really important to, what we were trying to accomplish. So those are just some of the things that we're seeing that are doing, that have been really effective, really in the past, I guess, honestly, 10 to 11 months now.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't think that we're going to see a massive shift. I mean, pandemic's still live, governmental shift. I think we'll still continue to see a little bit of the regional, statewide shutdowns and things that are impacting businesses, which I'm not thrilled about, but I think that we'll still see that at least for the first 6 months of the year. So I think it's super relevant. I don't think that's gone away. A couple questions for you I've got are about the medium, like that you've found to be the most effective so far, because it's shifted and it's going to continue to shift. But how are you seeing people engage in, and what types of assets are you developing to help tell these stories now? Is it still mostly print, or have you shifted media into maybe like multimedia video a lot more? Like, what have you seen work well as far as media is concerned?
Yeah, so I would say that, generally speaking, as we speak, I think that TV, getting in studio and doing those types of segments are obviously really hard to do depending on where you are. Those are obviously really effective, especially for the more visual brands historically. And so I think that what we're seeing is there are some Zoom interviews that are happening, and there is some ways to be able to get the crews to come out. But, for the most part, the show must go on to a certain degree, but I think that it is a little bit more difficult. And so I think that this year we've really been prioritizing, especially as it relates to, the consumer side of things, kind of that illustration that I talked about earlier with like the take home stuff with influencers, or you could be doing, some type of LTO where it's a limited time only, for those who don't know what that is. For off-premise dining, or it could be, a little pop-up for an automotive brand that, you're finding people that are obsessed with their cars, and we give them a certain product that one of our clients may have, and from there they showcase that on Instagram, and then we invite the TV crews out there, and then they write about it and things like that. We have to be a little bit more creative and kind of use some guerrilla marketing approaches where there's not too many people gathering. But I think that one medium that has been really great for us this year is, and I know this intimately, and so do you because we're on one, but podcasts certainly have been a major boon for us on the franchise development side, because it's a really great way to provide some color on a couple different angles, right? The leadership angle, getting to know somebody who is a part of the organization in a big way, talking about, the economic side of things. And if you have an all-star franchisee that's on this podcast, that's really easy to talk about. And then, how they're different and why they're relevant. And you can hit so many different pitches all in one on those podcasts, because they are a little bit more long form, and that's acceptable. And quite frankly, podcast listenership has been up, really has been up quite a bit, which I think is strange, because a lot of people are just sitting around in their houses. But I know I listen to my podcast on Alexa all the time while I'm working all day, and I just get through a lot more content. And so we've seen that, and so that's really where we've tried to prioritize. And of course, print more regionally, and also for trades too. So like, if it's an automotive concept, you go to automotive. If it's a food concept, it's restaurants. If it's home improvement, that type of deal.
Yeah, a curiosity question, just because I can see as more and more people are kind of holed up in their homes and not as many people going to the office anymore. Have you guys experimented much with any sort of like direct mail pieces, any things like that? That's generally more marketing than PR, but have you done any PR using that tool so it goes direct into their homes?
I think that there has been some instances where we have kind of done, we picked out certain influencers or certain people based off of like a contest or a prize or whatever it may be, to be able to send it directly to their home because they are home, right? So I think that is something that we have done. Those pizza kits that I was talking about earlier, we kind of picked out a lot of influential people in particular markets to be able to send it to, free of charge, just as kind of like a surprise pop-up type of thing. So yeah, I would say that that's something that we certainly do. That's guerrilla marketing to its core, right? I think is really trying to be creative. And that's a lot of what we've had to do this year, is we've really had to dig deep, just because so many of the things that we have at our disposal that make PR great, like, doing major activations in markets where we're trying to get as many people there as possible, because a lot of people equals a lot of buzz. Can't do that right now. So you have to be creative. Yeah.
But be honest, isn't it a little fun though? It's got to be fun. It's challenging, but rewarding to see, wow, look what we just did. Like you never would have thought of that if there wasn't a pandemic going on.
I think that it's really forced us to think outside of the box. Fishman has always been a really strategic firm, and I think that's really been the core of what we've done. And we were really the first people in the space to think that consumer PR could help for franchise development PR, and vice versa. And that's really something that it's a widely held belief that now is out there, that I really feel like that my mother and Deborah, our COO, and my father really pioneered back in the day. And so I think that, overall, it has forced us to be even more strategic than we've ever been before. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Tell me, and the innovation is, I think, kind of exciting. And just, like I actually did my MBA thesis on influencer marketing, and honestly, it's the same. Well, not the same, just different channels, but the ability to identify and engage influencers is critical. And if you can, then but the hardest part is finding them. And I'm not going to ask any special sauce here, but I just wanted to highlight, you blew past that pretty quickly, but that's a crucial part of what you guys do. And a lot of the value I think PR firms provide that people miss is, how many people do you know that are influential in that marketplace? Oh, nobody. Okay. How about us? We got a lot of people. And then you guys can craft highly effective and high buzz generating activities, just because you guys it's kind of your domain that you own as the influencer space.
Yeah, I think that the strategy side of it is an incredibly important part to touch on. And I think that you're right. We probably should go through it a little bit further. And I think that what it boils down to is on the franchise development side, it's important to be able to know who your candidate is. I think that for some people, it's really easy to say, I just like somebody who has a sales background, or I like somebody who, is a multi-unit owner that's looking to diversify their portfolio, right? But it's so much more than that. And I think that that's part of what we try to do and try to flesh out with you, is to really figure out what the buying profile is. And sometimes people even name them and whatever it may be. And then from there, it allows you to think more intelligently about, what types of pitches we're going to be putting out there, and what types of outlets we're going for, and what types of content we're going for, and who is it for. And the fact remains for consumers as well, that that's the same thing. That is very much something that is not as, crazy for people to think about, because, consumer brands target certain people all the time, right? And that's not really as novel of an idea as is a buying profile for who's going to invest in you. But I think that they both are very much large components, and the same goes for the outlets and the influencers. There's many tools that we use to help us out to do that, but the good old human mind and kind of putting your heads together, so to speak, really does help to be able to kind of flesh that out to get the most value that you possibly can for the client.
Yeah. And let's explore that just a little bit deeper too. So a lot of brands, at least, and a lot of franchise dev, we work with a lot of folks in FranDev. They just, if you were to ask them, what is your ideal client profile? They would say somebody who wants to buy in the next 90 days and who has at least $1 million. They would just tell you what their qualifications are. They haven't done the homework. I had an interesting discussion with Kurt Hurley several podcasts ago about how to target multi-unit buyers, because that's a really unique subsegment that everybody that's wise is looking for, because they tend to perform better, they generate more revenue for you, but there's also some balancing acts there. You got to make sure you're not delaying revenue by letting them buy too many and then having them stall that. So that's a different discussion for another day. But I want to talk about that, because I'm sure you've had some interesting experiences working with folks that have had to develop it, and a lot of people probably haven't really thought that through for their FranDev. What are maybe some common mistakes you see in the way people define their ideal buyers when we talk about franchise development?
Well, I'll first say that, if anybody knew the perfect secret sauce to getting to multi-unit buyers, then I wouldn't even be talking to you right now. I'd be on a private jet on the beach. I'd be on a private jet on the way to the beach right now.
Oh yeah.
But I think that, as it relates to, more nuanced buying profiles and the difficulty that people have, I think that people kind of back themselves into a corner as it relates to, they get obsessed with what the people make, or, their liquid capital that they have available, or whatever it may be. And I don't necessarily think it's about that. I think that there is so much more to it. And if I bring it back to, I actually did a speech on this at the IFA 11 months ago, which is weird to think, but that was the last in-person conference that we had of a major scale aside from unconference. And when I was there and I spoke on it, I think that the biggest thing that I said, and I always bring it back to dating again, is that why would you want to bring somebody, into your system that if that's based off of money, and if I dated based off of money alone, that wouldn't really be a great thing. I don't really think that anybody would really feel too great about me if I just broke up with people, or if I started dating people based off of what they made. It's all about who they are and what they stand for and their values and all those things. And I think that the culture conversation with franchising can get a bit tired, I will be honest, but I think that it's more about, what they're interested in, and being able to market to them intelligently based off of what they do. And it may not even really be an obvious correlation with the naked eye, but I think that being able to really get that repetition and to be able to kind of create buying profiles based off of the unique, identifiers of the different people that have been successful within your network. All of them may like cats at the same time. You literally have no idea why, but it might be a major part of their personality, that literally every single top performer that you have loves cats, and that, spills into a certain personality trait that makes them a really good franchisee of XY. Right. And I think that that's a really important component, and that's where things are going. Right. And I think that that's what we really try hard to uncover. because it isn't about how much money they make. It's about, it's about the family makeup that they may have, or where they're from, or what their interests are. That's really what it's all about. And so that's where I see people really stumbling quite a bit, is that they just say, I just want a multi-unit owner, and that's all they want. And they don't really say anything else. And that's part of our job, is to challenge people to think through that a little bit more intimately.
Yeah. And one thing I'll bring up alongside this is data and research. And this is where I've seen a lot of franchise brands they haven't pinpointed it because they haven't spent the time to dissect and analyze, like, who are my top, let's look at my top. Usually you have 30% that are performing quite well. A third of them are not. They're doing okay. They're surviving, but they're not thriving. Then you've got a third that are usually struggling. And in most brands, it breaks out almost a bell curve in some regards, but it's pretty consistent. So what I've seen, though, is that if you ask the question, like, well, who are you selling to? Like, they don't know, but it's because they haven't dug into the details. And research is a big part of that. Primary research, interviews, asking questions, finding out, like, okay, of these the top third that you've got, what is it that's common about you? On a spreadsheet, you can see 60, 70% of what you need to know. Most of the time, it's that qualitative research where you're actually interviewing people and learning about them before you start to see the real trends. And also the cultural fit elements that are critical in this dating process. It's still a good metaphor, so let's cling to it. But it really needs to be a match both ways. And if you get somebody who's just like, I just want to make money. I just want to make money. Well, you're not going to buy a Firehouse Subs then. You'll make plenty of money, but that's not who they want. And they're smart about that. There are several brands that have been real smart, I think, about how they recruit. And they frankly won't let people buy in if they're not going to fit the culture of the brand, because that culture is ultimately what the consumers are going to experience. And that's going to, I talked about this about Quiznos in another podcast, but ultimately there was a culture breakdown. And that was a key component of what happened to other things too, but consistency across brand, all sorts of things that made it not as good of a consumer experience, which actually reduced sales and all sorts of other things. Like, it's tired, but it's important. But how do you hire for cultural fit, or how do you recruit for cultural fit? These are things I think you guys uncover well in that strategic planning part of the process.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's shift gears, just because I know we don't have 4 hours to talk about all this stuff, although we could break this down and do a lot more. Tell me about some success stories. I mean, people love that, but I'd love to know, like, have you a couple recent things you've done that have been successful? Why were they successful? And then maybe some things you've seen, not necessarily with you, but other PR things that don't work, and just give some people some good examples of do's and don'ts.
Yeah. So as it relates to the success stories, we can start with that first. I think that, going into that strategy piece that we were just touching on, we had a brand that came to us that said, we're about to acquire a new brand. We really just want to figure out our buying profiles, what worked for us when we had all this amazing growth, and what will work for the next brand, and maybe tweaked a little bit, but where did we find that success? And so we really just went through, and this was through content and through PR, candidly, to really figure out exactly who their buying profile was. And then we just started banging on those buying profiles and what those people look for and what they read and what they watch. And it was unbelievable to see the differences that we had in the media coverage that we were receiving. It's a food concept that, and I think that it made just such a significant difference, because we were able to basically copy, paste, and then go off of what we had for the new brand that they acquired. And it just made such a difference in what we were really doing for them. And it really was just the proactive communication between us and the client, and them saying, you know what, I want to just think more critically about the types of pieces that we're getting. We're getting amazing things, but I want it to be, national, huge, but I also want it to be super nuanced for what those people read and like to do and like to watch and all that as well. So I want both of those things, right? PR at the end of the day is that. PR needs to be loud, but PR needs to be also, really refined and focused in different ways, right? That's what makes it great, is that if you have a refined approach where it's both, that makes a significant difference. And so they really actually helped us form our new program that we have, that we just literally just launched which I will say the name of it, but people will learn more. It's called Lead Equations. And so this brand really helped us to figure that out, is to, we scientifically really determined what people were listening to and watching and reading, and we went out and did it, right? And I think that that made a significant, difference. And I think that the other example that I have that's really worked, really a success story for us, is doing these little activations that we're doing in local markets as it relates to charity. And I think that that's really made a significant difference. Many of our clients have done work with, frontline workers or whatever it may be this year. And I think that really made a significant difference in, how much they felt like they were part of the community. Because, believe it or not, especially with the owner operator brands, you find a lot of people don't just want to do it to make money. They want to do it because they want to be part of something bigger than themselves, right? And that is what PR is and is to its core. And so a lot of examples of that across our agency that have really helped us. And I think that one thing I'd say that hasn't worked super well, there was an example, actually, a press release that came out the other day where it was essentially kind of a media stunt about, candidly, it was about the election, and it was about, the unfortunate things that happened in DC the other day. Yeah. And it was a media stunt, kind of talking about that, in a brand commenting on that entire controversy, which, as a PR person, I will tell you, neutral is the key for literally everything. And you have so many different people at stake, especially in franchising, that have different ideologies, different backgrounds, different everything. There is something that brings them all together, which is the brand that they know and love, right? But I think that, taking a stance one way or the other on something that not everybody that, wears your colors or your logo agrees with, isn't super great. And there was a very recent example of this that came out on the day of the unfortunate events in DC, that had food reporters across the industry, franchise reporters, PR professionals, not only in franchising, but outside of it, kind of appalled. And it wasn't super great, but I would caution people. I think that the way that you go through all these events that happens here is that being neutral and being respectful and being responsible, but trying your best not to take sides, not because you don't believe strongly about something, but more out of respect for the different ideologies that you have within your network, is something that I would say is a very important thing to keep in mind.
Zach, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's so much polarization right now. The media works real hard to polarize people. It sells more click ads. I mean, and so they're going to constantly take hard angles on every story because it makes people read, and then makes them see the display ads on the page. I mean, that's just how it works. It's why I didn't get into news writing, because I realized it was just a gimmick, to sell ads, and I didn't love that. It felt inauthentic. But I would say it's easy to get on the bandwagon. I've seen so many people try it, and I don't know specifically the example you're talking about, and let's not mention names, but it's I can't agree with you more. Neutrality, because you'll have franchisees, people that want to buy your brand, that want to interact with your brand as a consumer, that are across the whole spectrum, and there's no need to ruffle feathers. There's no need to put out to take a tough stance on things. Some of the brands that did, it didn't go well for them in the long run, taking hard stances on political things. And I'm talking about just major, like, household brands like Target and others, turned off a lot of their love group. And there was no need to do it, other than they thought they were going to get some press out of it. So thanks for bringing that up. Let's wrap up, because I know we could talk about this for a long time, but if I'm let's say I'm an emerging brand, or I'm an established brand, I haven't really explored PR before, what should I do now? Like, if I'm going to engage with a Fishman PR, a high quality firm, what are some things that they probably need to be thinking about now before they do? And what are some things that you're going to help them develop just to get started?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I think that the first thing is that, you need to actually have a website that converts. I can't even tell you how many times when, really when I was younger, I suppose that was something that wasn't necessarily always thought of as a requirement to do PR. And then eventually it became something that obviously is so important, because our goal is to drive people to your website, because that's the place where they're gonna, where you're going to be able to scream from the mountaintops about your brand the most. And that's really our goal, is to force people to do that indirectly or directly.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that people absolutely must have. And I think that the other thing that is really important is, it doesn't matter who it is, if they're a marketing person or a development person, or if they're the founder or CEO, somebody has to be able to donate that 1 hour a day per week to really be able to focus on PR. I think that we typically say, do you have somebody on your staff that can focus for 5 hours a week on us? Whether it's emails, phone calls, strategy, anything. And if the answer to that is no, then that makes it really hard, because PR does require a lot of attention, a lot of nuance, a lot of time, quite frankly. And I think that it is something that we say really often, are you sure? Do you have somebody who's there to do this? And it doesn't matter who it is, if they've never worked with a PR firm before. That's part of our job too, is to teach people who don't know how to do that, right? And that's why we have Fishman PR and Franchise Elevator. We have brands that are emerging that the founder wants to do it. We can help them do that for a lower budget, right? But I think that that is one component that's important. And I think that the last thing is being open to constructive criticism and being open to thinking outside of the box. I think that that's really the last thing. So many brands come in and say, it's happened many times before. They say, I just want to be able to sell leads. I want to be able to get this many leads with this many stories. And they try to draw dots. And I think that a lot of people are kind of missing the point, if that is what they're trying to do. And as numbers driven as I am, and my background, I also do understand the importance of the emotional attachment that PR is really trying to create. And sometimes you just can't put a price or a number or a budget on that, and I think that, everybody has their own comfort level in terms of what they feel makes the most sense to spend. And we do our best to be able to try to draw numbers back to it as much as we can. But sometimes it is really hard to do. And so, having that trust to allow us to think outside of the box and really, and really feel like that's really what is going to move the needle for you. And it's not going to be about getting that many stories. It's about quality over quantity, right? And I think is something that people just have to remember. And sometimes people don't. And so those are really the three things that I see that are really common mistakes that people need to really need to be okay with in their head before they feel like that they can invest with somebody like us.
That's great advice. Yeah, I think anybody ought to, it doesn't matter what it is, but PR is a great example of that. Those three things are pillars to making any strategic initiative succeed, but especially in PR. I appreciate it. Zack, you've been fantastic and generous with your time. I know how busy you've been, and I really appreciate it. And I'll if I think of anything else, or if you feel like there's a follow-up that we should do on this, just to cover some more depth on public relations strategies or best practices, let's do it. I think you've got a lot to share. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you letting me talk about this. It's something that I obviously is near and dear to my heart. I've grown up around it. And so I feel like these things have always been said to me, but it's always really nice to be able to, make it a reality and talk about it with people like you. So cheers for having me on.
Yeah, thanks a lot.